Hi, this is Remembering the Past with Corey Franklin, the show where we talk about people who died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to talk about two warriors. The first is Alex Karras. Alex Karras died recently at the age of 77, and he was one of the best football players that I ever saw. He was a great defensive lineman for the Detroit Lions in the 1960s, and he became a great television and movie actor after that, on top of which he had a great sense of humor, and most importantly, he never took himself too seriously. Let me state at the outset, it's a travesty that Alex Karras is not in the Professional Football Hall of Fame. He was a nice Greek boy from Gary, Indiana, and he went to school at the University of Iowa, where he was the best lineman in the country, and in fact finished second in the Heisman Trophy voting in 1957 to John David Crow. Sports Network rates him number 33 on the list of greatest Big Ten players of all time.
Number 33, Alex Karras, a dominant defensive lineman. Karras led the 56 Hawkeyes to the school's first ever trip to Pasadena and took home the Outland Trophy in his senior season.
He was drafted by the Detroit Lions for his pass rushing ability. The Packers' Jerry Kramer called him one of the two best defensive linemen he ever saw, with Merlin Olsen. He always played really well against the Packers, especially in their annual Thanksgiving Day game. Karras joined the Lions just as they were falling off from championships, and they weren't very good in the 1960s, but he was the anchor of a staunch defense that was never quite up to the Packers or the Bears or the Colts. He was part of the all-decade team of the 1960s, and as I said, he should be in the Hall of Fame because he was easily one of the two or three best defensive linemen of the 1960s. He made the Pro Bowl 4 times, and the only mar in his career was that he was suspended for the season in 1963 for some small-time gambling. They say he was gambling on the 1962 championship game between the Packers and the Giants. He was never gambling or bet against his own team. He never threw any games or anything like that. It was pretty penny ante stuff. But Pete Rozelle wanted to protect the image of the National Football League, and he suspended Alex Karras. He also suspended, by the way, that season Paul Hornung, who was the league's golden boy. So it was a matter of Pete Rozelle cracking down on any petty gambling because he wanted to keep the image of the league up at a time when the league was just gaining popularity, and Alex Karras resented him for that. Karras was a showman. The year he was out of professional football, he tended bar at Lindell's AC, which was a big-time sports bar in Detroit, and he decided to go into professional wrestling. He actually made more money in professional wrestling for a year than he did in professional football. One night in Lindell's AC, a guy came in and he was tearing up the place, and Alex Karras was a big bad guy, and so he said, "You got to knock this off," and the guy didn't. He challenged him to a fight. They stepped outside. They had a big brawl. Turned out the guy was Dick the Bruiser, the wrestler who Alex Karras was going to fight the next night, and they became fast friends. After Alex Karras left professional football, he went into television, and he did a stint on Monday Night Football, and here you can see how he doesn't take himself too seriously when he's with Howard Cosell.
To embellish what I said earlier about Lou Holtz, here is my colleague in crime. Box Office Barometer named him a year ago as the best potential young actor in the movie.
Thank you.
Alex Karras.
It's really hot out here tonight. Are you two all right?
I'm chilled to the bone.
You know, Howard, I was going to discuss about the fact that both teams have real young football players on their team, and they're very good football players. But both coaches, I think, especially Lou Holtz, has decided to put a little bit more of that rah-rah spirit in the pro leagues and that college spirit, that old give it to the Gipper. So I want to recite or sing perhaps a little song that Lou Holtz has written for his New York Jet football team, and see if you kind of like this spirit. I think it's really neat out there, everyone. And it goes something like this. When the game acts like men, we're together, win or lose. New York Jets keep rolling along. Isn't that terrific? And at the bottom is, and wherever we go, we'll let the critics know that the Jets are here to stay. Which really will excite some of the old ball players out there. I'm sure how it excites me.
If they do, you've got a scoop, Alex.
Right.
Thank you very much.
He loved to goof like that on television. He did an Odd Couple once where he was great. He played a professional football player who thought his wife was goofing around with Felix. It was really funny. Here's a commercial he did where he doesn't really take himself too seriously either.
Hello out there. Listen, how would you like to save some money and get something I'm absolutely sure you can use and enjoy right now, right where you are? It's TV Guide, America's favorite television magazine, and here's the story.
And then he became big in movies. He'd actually done a movie while he was playing football. He'd done Paper Lion, the George Plimpton story about how he became a quarterback. But Alex Karras made his name in Blazing Saddles, Mel Brooks' parody of Westerns, as Mongo, the guy who punches out a horse, one of the most famous scenes in movie comedy. Here's a snip where Cleavon Little delivers an exploding candygram to Mongo, played by Alex Karras.
Candygram for Mongo. Hey, Mongo. Sign, please. Thank you.
Mongo like candy.
That's Mel Brooks' comedy for you with Alex Karras. He hit it big in the 1980s with his own television series. He co-starred with his wife, Susan Clark. He plays a retired Greek football player, imagine that, who adopts a young African-American kid named Webster. And the series was named Webster. It ran for 4 years. It was quite popular. Here's the theme song.
Stepping our way to the track of the day. Never getting caught up. Love was never brought up. It's not the thing to do. Ooh, it was you that came you. You made me leap without taking a look. I never thought forever was the best I could do. It was you, me, and you.
Alex Karras is a very talented, very insightful guy. He suffered from football-related dementia late in his life, but before he did, he gave this interview to ESPN, and you can tell that he was not just a big, dumb football player.
Obviously, it wasn't very popular because I didn't make much money playing pro football, and that lasted for my whole career, actually. To say that I became a very rich man playing football is not true. I thought that the reason that we didn't have more interest in the game is because I don't think television-wise they were doing an awful lot in those days with football, and I think they were just getting warmed up. They took all of this writings and all of these people talking about it on television and television moving in on it. They finally got it to where people were very excited about the game of football, professional football. I think it's a better game than college myself, but at that time I was making $9,000, 12 games. Yeah, 12 games. I'd probably be dressed better. You'd probably see a much better dressed person than me. You know, I mean, gosh, if I'd have made the money these guys make. And don't get me wrong, I'm really happy for them to do so because I've seen lots of us characters in the last 5 years. A lot of them are not in good shape. A lot of them have very bad problems with their heads, the concussions that they've had. Some of them lost their sight. Some of them lost their memories. It's not a good thing to finally find out what's going on with the older professional football players who played a long time. The great thing about the reunion with the Lions after not seeing most of these guys for 35 years, my problem with it was that I was going to be a little leery of what most of them would be doing and if they were successful and if they were happy with their lives. You know, I was very fortunate to play with a team that was, and this is the truth too, I liked everybody on the team. I never disliked anybody on the team. They were all wonderful people. I came back and I was just leery of maybe them not being well and doing not well, but I was surprised to see that all of them were very successful in what they had been doing, and like I, you know, had retired and we were very well to do and they doing well and everyone was happy, and that was the happiest moment, one of the happiest moments of my life, because I knew that I was working under conditions that is not normal. Because these guys that I had played with for all these years were terrific human beings.
Alex Karras, good guy. Final word goes to Mongo.
Mongo only pawn in game of life.
No, Alex, you are much more than that. We're going to move on to a warrior of a different type, America's soldier, Sgt Major Basil Plumley, who died recently at the age of 92. As I said, he was one of America's greatest soldiers. He earned over 30 decorations, and he fought in 3 wars. He fought in World War II at Salerno in Sicily and on the beach at Normandy. He fought in Korea, and he fought in Vietnam in one of the famous battles of the Vietnam War. Only 325 men fought in all 3 wars. And he didn't just fight, he fought with distinction. Few soldiers in the American military have ever earned the reputation of Basil Plumley. He shunned publicity. In fact, we don't have any clips of him actually talking, but he became known to the public through the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley, the first battle of the Vietnam War, where almost 3,000 North Vietnamese regulars took on about 450 American soldiers in the fall of 1965. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. The Americans held their position, but in what was emblematic of the Vietnam War, It was a great American tactical victory with a lot of bravery, but ultimately strategically meant very little in the larger outcome of the war. Plumley's commanding officer was Lieutenant Colonel Hal Moore, the leader of the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry, the same unit that George Custer had led, and the story of the 1st Battalion, 7th Cavalry was told in a phenomenal book called We Were Soldiers Once and Young, written by war correspondent and photographer Joseph Galloway along with Moore, and describing the exploits of Moore, the 7th Cav, and Plumley at the Battle of the Ia Drang Valley. The book was made into a pretty good movie, with Mel Gibson starring as Moore and Sam Elliott as Plumley, and here's a snip from the movie. That's Gibson as Moore giving a speech, and Elliott as Plumley at the end.
When Crazy Horse was a baby, he nursed from the breast of every woman in the tribe. The Sioux raised their children that way. Every warrior called every woman in the tribe mother. Every older warrior, they called him grandfather. And the point here is that they fought as a family. Take care of your men. Teach them to take care of each other. Because when this starts, each other is all we're going to have.
Any of you some bitches calls me grandpa, I'll kill you.
That was Basil Plumley, a laconic but tough son of a West Virginia coal miner who inspired respect in everybody. To give you an idea of the respect that Basil Plumley inspired, here is the real Hal Moore at West Point at the first Hal Moore Warrior of Excellence Award, introducing Basil Plumley, and they're both over 90 years old. And you can hear the love and the respect that Hal Moore has in his voice for Basil Plumley.
When I took command of my battalion at Fort Benning, Georgia, in 1964, in the 11th Air Assault Division, the man that I met as I went to my battalion headquarters was Sgt Major Basil Plumley. And Sgt Major Plumley was with me for 2 years at Fort Benning and in Vietnam. And whenever he talked, I shut up and listened. And I would advise any commander who had a good first sergeant or a good sergeant major, when that NCO talks, shut your mouth up and listen, and you'll learn a hell of a lot. Sergeant Major, come up here. I want you men and women to see a real soldier. You ladies and gentlemen have the great privilege of seeing a great soldier, a veteran of World War II, of Korea, and Vietnam, a veteran of 4 combat military jumps into Europe, another jump or 2 in Korea into combat. Sergeant Major Plumley, I'm proud of you. I want you to look at me. This is a soldier right here. We were the 2 first men off the helicopter when we made the assault combat landing and landing zone X-ray in the Ia Drang Valley. And Sergeant Major Plumley and I were the last 2 men off of that battlefield after we made sure that no man was left behind and that we're all coming home. No MIAs.
Did you hear what he said? This is a real soldier, and that's at West Point. Here's Intelligence Officer Kerry Patton writing a eulogy for Sergeant Major Basil Plumley. Part of the job of a military trainer entails an unprecedented amount of research. Research never consists of just a specific subject, but it also involves historical events and the study of key leaders. I do not know of any military trainer who hasn't come across the name of Command Sergeant Major Basil L. Plumley, one of our nation's most treasured enlisted military men. Beyond achieving the 2nd highest enlisted rank any service member can achieve, which is more than impressive, there is something much greater about Commander Plumley's call of duty. It comes from the stories that followed him long after his retirement. Stories of Commander Plumley were easy to find, especially after 2002, when his strength of character was revealed in the movie We Were Soldiers. Actor Sam Elliott played the role of the infamous non-commissioned officer Command Sergeant Major Plumley. As a military man, records reveal incredible heroism displayed by the enlisted legend, far beyond what the movie revealed. Few realize he was a 3-time recipient of the U.S. Army's Combat Infantry Badge, something only a couple hundred Americans were ever awarded. He earned such awards through his willingness to serve America in 3 wars, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. He also earned a chest plate of awards and decorations which could be seen as he wore his Class A uniform, the Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 27 awards and decorations in all, none of which comes from a career simply sitting back in garrison. You have to venture off to war to be awarded the types of accommodations that Commander Plumley earned. Joe Galloway, the notorious wartime correspondent, also a key leading figure in We Were Soldiers, has written numerous accounts reflecting Commander Plumley's character. The excerpt below is just one of many showing how brave and demanding Commander Plumley truly was. The sergeant major bent at the waist and shouted over the incredible din of battle, "You can't take no pictures laying down here on the ground, Sonny." I thought to myself, he's right. I also thought fleetingly that we might all die here in this place, and if I'm going to die, I would just as soon take mine standing up beside a man like this. Like a fool, I got up. I followed the sergeant major over to the makeshift aid station where Doc Carrera and Sergeant Tommy Keaton were tending the wounded. Plumley hollered at them, "Gentlemen, prepare to defend yourselves," as he pulled out his .45 pistol and jacked around into the chamber. The command sergeant major was ferocious. During the incident described by Galloway, and while a majority of the men were armed with M16 assault rifles, Plumley pulled out an old .45 pistol. Some would call this insanity, but for old Iron Jaws it was a motivational display of pure confidence. We shouldn't think for a second that Vietnam was necessarily where the senior enlisted man was truly seasoned. He fought in the Battle of D-Day, and that is where many believe he witnessed his first call to action, but they would be wrong. Historical accounts show that Basil Plumley participated in military operations dating back to 1943 during the Sicily campaign, surely a frightening experience for any 18 or 19-year-old. Few know whether Commander Plumley ever truly feared the enemy, but what we do know is the fact that he welcomed the fight. According to GuardianofValor.com, he operated in more than 20 different military operations. Of note, this was all fulfilled through his willingness to volunteer. He was never drafted. Commander Plumley was America's soldier, the kind who watched the world around him turn into chaos. He was the kind who heard the call for battle and laced his boots tightly to trek into danger. Whether he agreed or not with policy mattered little. His men were going to be sent off in harm's way, and he could never simply leave them behind by staying in the rear. It's difficult to teach anyone such ideology of love, passion, and courage. It's something you cannot teach in the classroom. It's all about doing, and by doing, others observe. It is the student's observation to lead from the front that serves as the greatest of lessons, and leading in the front is exactly what Commander Plumley did time and again. No, I never had the honor or the privilege to observe Commander Plumley in action. In fact, I never personally knew the man, but reading so much about him, I feel like I have known him for a very long time. His heroism, patriotism, and love for what he did has become a part of me. I believe it has become a part of many. In fact, I know it is a part of many. I've been honored to observe the heroic actions of many of today's warriors. America is filled with warriors willing to take up arms and rally to the battle cry. They come in multiple forms and from multiple walks of life. Some serve in the military, others are intelligence community, many in the civilian government, and equally many are private contractors. For every American warrior still voluntarily willing to sacrifice everything for this great nation, there is a piece of Command Sergeant Major Basil Plumley in us. We do our best to motivate the troops. We bend over backwards to pick up a fallen brother, and we cherish the fruits of this great nation. I believe that history tells us that is exactly what Commander Plumley wanted us to become, fearless leaders. That was the eulogy for Sergeant Major Basil L. Plumley, one of the great infantry heroes in American history. I urge anyone who's interested to read the book We Were Soldiers Once and Young, or if not, see the movie. I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer Sid Tepps. The closing theme tonight will be a beautiful military hymn called Mansions of the Lord, sung by the West Point Glee Club. It's in honor and tribute to Sergeant Major Basil Plumley, who has our eternal gratitude. We can never repay him for what he did for us.
When no mothers cry, we will stand.